starts in the mouth. Well, actually, it starts in the food that we eat, but we're going to review that a little bit later. But as far as the control that we have, chewing, there are enzymes in the mouth that help break the food down. And we do want to eat until the food is liquefied. Okay? Just checking to see if... Okay. Esophagus is a muscular tube. It conducts the food bolus down to the stomach, where the stomach mixes the food. It's a muscle. The stomach is a muscle that just churns the food until it becomes liquid. It has acid, the gastric juice. That's what, if it comes up, tastes so bad and causes the heartburn. But the stomach adds enough liquid and does enough churning until it actually becomes a liquid, and until it's a liquid, it will not leave the stomach. At the very first part of the small intestine, then, is the gallbladder and the pancreas release certain products. The gallbladder releases bile. Bile is a substance that what's called emulsifies the fat. Little tiny fat molecules surround the fat so that it can be absorbed and broken down better. And another nice thing that the gallbladder, the liver does is in the bile are often toxins. Cholesterol is there, and so that leaves the system. Part of the problem of not having bowel movements that are frequent enough is these toxins and cholesterol that is part of the bile. If it doesn't move through the system well and get excreted well, then there'll actually be time for reabsorption to take place, which we don't want to have happen. The pancreas has very specific enzymes that break the food down, the fats, the proteins, and the carbohydrates. The small intestine has what we call microvilli. If the intestinal tract, which it is a tube, then the wall of the tube is what we call microvilli. It is actually shaped up and down like this, and that whole surface of the small intestine is the surface area of approximately a tennis court. It's a huge amount of enzyme breakdown. The final stage of the breakdown of the food after we've chewed it, after the stomach does the acid breakdown, the pancreas does its breakdown product. The very last step of the breakdown of digestion takes place in those microvilli, so that final absorption of the nutrients can then take place. Now we have the proteins broken down into amino acids. We have the fats broken down into their fatty acid components and not big fats. Surrounding especially the large intestine, but surrounding the intestinal tract is more lymphatic tissue than any place else in the body. The reason for that is so that if we bring in bacteria and viruses, we have a very good system for taking care of them and do not let these bacteria and viruses get into the body through the intestinal tract. Now, there are veins that conduct everything, all the contents of the intestinal tract. Portal veins, they're called portal veins, but all these veins go to the liver for detoxification purposes, because sometimes we don't eat the best of food. There may be toxins, there may be additives, there may be poisons that are actually in the foods, and so all the food breakdown is going to go to the liver for detoxification before it goes anywhere else. At the end of the small intestine is a valve. Just like there's a valve going into the stomach that we call the gastroesophageal valve, and leaving the stomach is the pyloric valve. Now, leaving the small intestine is an ileo, because the ileum is the third part of the small intestine, and the cecum is the very beginning part of the large intestine. There is an ileocecal valve that permits then this liquefied stool to get into the large intestine. If that valve constricts and is tight, a lot of people complain of a right lower quadrant pain that's in the same place as the appendix. And so when that is in spasm, then it hurts and people complain of pain there. And sometimes I will just, you have to go pretty deep and it's pretty painful, where we can actually massage that valve just like any other muscle that's tight and get some relaxation, and then that discomfort can go away. The large intestine, the purpose of the large intestine then is to reabsorb the water. It does absorb a limited number of vitamins. Most of the vitamins and minerals have been absorbed from the small intestine. Large intestine eliminates the waste. And there's a lot of bacteria and yeast, the candida, and the what we call probiotics, that's the acidophilus and lactobacillus. In fact, if we were to measure, if we were to weigh the amount of bacteria, the lactobacillus and the acidophilus that is in the large intestine, it would be the largest organ of the body. It would weigh more than the liver would. So there's a lot of bacteria and yeast that's in the large intestine. Now, if we bring undigested food from the small intestine into this heavy dose of bacteria, which wants to break down whatever's left over, and then we excrete the waste, if there's a lot of it, especially if there's a fair amount of carbohydrates in that batch, then it's going to love it, and it's going to produce gas. And that's where a lot of the large intestinal and the intestinal gas comes from, is from food that is not digested. So we have now understand the basic process, normal process of food. Now let's understand, or of digestion, let's understand where the breakdowns occur.